One-on-one for an hour. Go up to the top. Go ahead.
Carl, I think this one's for you. As far as our homework, to get the loaners to, quiet loaners to go contact representatives, I have a difficult time telling the difference between the lip service Second Amendment legislators who will do something and we'll give them our support versus the ones you pointed out who pay lip service but then won't even come to a public forum. I believe those are the ones I should be badgering.
Yeah.
How do we find out more about them?
A couple things. One is, I never want to discourage you from contacting an elected representative to share your point of view. But let me just say, they don't give a rip. Okay? They just don't give a rip. The little emails that come in, what they will do is they will send you a canned statement to make you think that you and they agree on the issue. They will literally try to convince you that, oh, yeah, I'm so on your issue, I'm so good. So I say, yeah, contact them if it's the last thing on your list. Shoot the email saying support this bill or oppose this bill or I don't like your position on that. But really what you need to do is the only way they pay attention is when an organized, integrated, coordinated political group takes them to task during the election. And the only way to do that is to band with others who collectively can work together to affect change. So I would rather have you get angry by recruiting 20 more people to help out Michael's organization. And Michael has on his website a scorecard of elected officials based on his back and forth grilling on them. They're either good, bad, based upon, really he gets in and finds out whether they're serious about it, or he also classifies people as unknown. And the unknowns are the ones who will literally say, oh, I agree with you, but it doesn't measure up or pass Michael's smell test of, no. Not only did you say the right thing, but I've seen you do the right thing. So that's on your website as well, the scorecard.
Yeah, that's on the website. And yeah, the undecided is kind of a, well, yeah, I say the right thing, but I haven't actually done anything yet. Because we really judge people on their actions. And we meet with people all the time, and our volunteers meet with people. John, we actually had the district attorney come down to Poway Weapons and Gear and talk to her about some of the gun laws. So we really do get involved, and I hear you. They say one thing, and then when it comes time to taking action, it's extremely frustrating. But again, if there aren't, and I say this over and over again, if there are no consequences, after they do say something and then don't follow through with it, if there are no consequences, well, guess what? What do they care? They won. So, we really try to nail them down to a position. We try to nail them down to actually taking action on something, and then we need help holding them accountable. One guy in one group, won't do as much as hundreds or even thousands of people banding together to say, hey, we're going to make sure you don't get reelected. We're going to make sure that your constituents know that you said one thing and did another.
And by the way, in politics, and I can speak for experience, because I use this on the city council. I was elected to a 2-6 minority. 2-6 minority, and the other guy that was with me, who was a Republican, he might as well have been a potted plant in the corner. Usually it was a 1-7 vote on the council on these issues. But I was able to get most of our fiscal reform agenda through on the basis of building a super PAC which had sufficient funding so that I could do a referenda on any bad bill that they passed. And I would sit there and I'd say, this is not good enough, and I will do a referenda, and I'm going to put your name on the signature sheet as the person who did this bad bill, and we're going to go door to door in your district and collect signatures from your residents, letting them know that you passed this bad bill. And what they did was, because I had a loaded gun with the super PAC, they would then moderate the bill and fix some of the problems. Not everything I'd want, but enough so that I would say, okay, fine, all right. It's still a bad bill, but it's better than it was last week. And then we ultimately did use that to do town halls and robo-dials and e-blasts into their districts and put pressure on them to get things done. So that's why I say it's not just about you contacting the legislative official, but if Michael is properly supported, he can go and say, look, I'm not going to tell you whether I'm going to come down on you like a bunch of bricks during your election, but I have the ability to do so. And so if you vote this way, we will be there, or we may be there. And just the threat of they may have a bunch of mailers done against them will be enough to keep them on the right path. Right down here.
Excuse me. I got to preface the first one. The first 10 amendments were adopted and ratified together. It's called the Bill of Rights. By what authority does the California legislator and the governor have to tell us what to do with our firearms? And once the ammunition kicks in, can I go to Phoenix, hypothetically, buy some ammo and bring it back across the state line legally?
Okay, let's just deal with the constitutional issue. They're going to do things that are not constitutional until the Supreme Court says no, or until we throw them out of office.
But what's the authority they're getting away with it?
They don't have authority. It's they're trying to go and put restrictions on and hope that we don't sue. And when it does end up in a lawsuit, then we've got the Supreme Court that gets to rule. And assuming we get a new justice, it might be a favorable court. But for example, on the Sheriff Gore CCW, if that does get taken up, how do you see that playing out?
You know, it's honestly really difficult to predict the outcome of a litigation, especially one that's going to be as contentious as this one. Obviously, it does help to have judges that tend to lean towards a pro-Second Amendment approach, but that's no guarantee. You can see that in any number of Second Amendment cases. Again, most recently in the Fourth Circuit, they just announced that, or they just upheld a ban on semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines. And if you notice, that is way more strict than the law in California. And in that, they had great arguments, rational, logical arguments against the ban, yet the other arguments prevailed. Whether or not they were good or not, in my opinion, they were horrible. But in that court, in that system, that flew and that worked. All you can do is hope and pray you make the best arguments you can based on the law, and you gotta wait and see.
And keep running them to the Supreme Court. Let's go to the top up there.
By the way, just to answer
your question about ammunition across state lines, you cannot. You cannot bring. It has to go. If ammunition is shipped into California, it has to come into an FFL.
And that's starting January 1st, 2018.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. Under this law, you cannot.
Up at the top. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Thank you all for coming and spending time with us today. I hope this isn't a redundant question to the first question that was asked regarding the assault ban, but so let's say that someone does decide to register whenever that becomes available. So what does that mean? Does that mean, I know that there's a lot of unknowns and maybe you can't give a concise answer, but the common thought, what is the common thought, that it's okay now that you register, you can use these out in the range, or you know, what have you, or is there some type of sneaky thing behind it that, you know, is, okay, now you're registered, now we're gonna come, now we know you have it? Or, I know you said before that likely no one's gonna come knocking at your door, but let's say you're out at the range and, you know, are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to use that, supposedly, if you actually register it?
If you use the registration process that happened in 1999, 2000, if you got that letter, you registered your firearm, you could use it at any time. You were fine. We always told people to make sure and have their letter with them. So it'll be the same thing. It'll be a registered firearm that you can use as you see fit. The questions are, can you modify it? Can you take the bullet buttons off? Can you use magnetic mag releases? Those are some of the things we don't know. But right now, as history is we've played out in the last 16 years, once it's registered, it allows you to keep your firearm in the configuration you currently have it in, which is a bullet button firearm, and you can use it as you wish.
Right, so as long as you purchased it prior to this last December 31st and
Correct.
You register it, you could have all the regular evil features on it.
Correct.
Okay.
And what we don't know is, can you take the bullet button off and use it as an original assault weapon, which
Right.
most of us would probably argue you should be able to.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
If I have shells that I purchased prior to January 2018, and I'm on the way to the range, and I get stopped for some reason, and they say, do you have a license for the shells, and say it's after 2018? Are they going to ask you to show that you have a license to buy the shells that you purchased before that date?
So the license requirements and the background requirements for ammunition purchases start in 2019. So let's say in your situation you have ammo that you bought beforehand. There's no requirement of those licenses to possess the ammunition under the law. It's strictly in order to buy more ammunition, you have to have those licenses.
All right, let's go down here.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions. First of all, is there authority for the new president to come up with federal reasonable guidelines related to the issues that we're talking about today by executive order? Obama, of course, tried to do some things, different bans because of different things going on in the country. That's my first question. The other one is some of the gun ranges have mentioned that if you buy ammo in the range to shoot in the range, you don't have to go through a background check. And if you could address that issue. I was actually told that by a couple different ranges.
I can answer the range. I'll defer to John on the presidential decrees. On the range, as the law is currently written, if you buy it in the range to use in the range, there is no background check. The gray area then becomes, what is my obligation as a range owner? Do I have to go through your bag and count? You know, you bought 500 rounds. Did you shoot all 500 rounds? So that's where we're going to get into some more gray area. Right now, my philosophy is if you buy it and you go into the range and shoot it, under Fourth Amendment, I don't have the right to really be inspecting your stuff, so I'm just going to defer to you and assume you did.
Okay. And then on the first issue, the door swings one way.
On Trump.
Feds can impose things on us, but Trump can't go in and say, I'm going to usurp Department of Justice in the state to issue different regulations, right?
All right, so the foundation of this question is the authority versus federal and state law. Obviously, the federal government has the authority to initiate certain laws throughout the country. At the same time, states have their own authority to issue state law. Because it's their state, they regulate the people within that state, they have their authority. This is a long-standing issue of states' rights. In one theory, you can say that any executive order from a president, any president, whether Republican or Democrat, is an overstep in federal law over state law and state authority. There's arguments against that. This is an age-old argument that we've never found the true answer to, and we constantly go back and forth with who has more power and who should have more power. The danger in relying on the federal government or president or administration to enforce laws throughout the states is you're now relying on the federal government more, when in the majority of the instances you may want states to have those rights to make decisions. It's a fine line. It's one of those things.
Our salvation will be the Supreme Court, not Donald Trump.
That's the biggest way Trump's going to help us, is appoint judges, and not just on the Supreme Court, but But if you look at his announcement when President Trump announced his pick, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the guy sitting next to him was Wayne LaPierre from the NRA. So I think that's a pretty good sign. But that's what he's not going to be able to swoop in and solve all our problems. We're going to have to fight our own fight. But he will be able to appoint people on the Supreme Court, and he's also not. Hopefully, I mean, this is why I voted for him. He's not going to do some of these ridiculous things that you talked about that Obama's done. That's just, frankly, just harassment. It's not, it's not helpful in any way other than to harass legal gun ownership.
There are 137 vacant federal judgeships that are on the table right now, which is a pretty high number. And then there's also a bill being carried in the Senate to break up the Ninth Circuit and split the jurisdiction. In doing that, there's also the argument that half of the judges would go to the new 12th Circuit, half the judges would be retained.
Without someone doing something about it, it's not going to get any better.